Ryan Gladstone. I'm the Director of Product for Platform here at ArcXP, and that includes IFX, which is one of our newest products to help developers, customer developers, and SI partners extend and integrate with Arc to make sure that it can support your custom business needs. So Arc has always been focused on making sure that you have the extensibility points you need to be successful on the platform. It's something that Mike had talked about repeatedly yesterday. It's something we talked about again today. We don't ever aim to be a one-stop shop where we're meeting everything you could possibly do, because there's no way we could do that well, and we know that there's a huge diversity in different solutions that you need for your market, for your business, for your content type. So we've always had a strong focus on extensibility, and super excited to show you how we're pushing that forward today. Extensibility is a core part of our product strategy. It's why if you ever get kind of the full roadmap preview, we'll always talk about extensibility as part of this core triangle that really guides what problems we tackle or decide to tackle. It's also why we decided to build Page Builder Engine before we built themes, so that our customer developers could meet their bespoke needs, express themselves, express their business, and make sure they had the toolbox to be successful on the platform. Of course, we've added themes, and that's been great to speed onboarding, to lower maintenance costs, but Arc has always been a developer platform first, before anything in the turnkey space. It's also why we built webhooks out of WebSked and Composer, so that if something interesting happens in the Arc ecosystem, so you add a story to a platform, for example, and you want to push it out to a browser notification, for example, as Vicente talked about yesterday, or maybe you want to create a list of stories and send that to your email newsletter provider, you can use webhooks for that. It's also one of the main integration points for Roxen for their print system and getting your stories out of your digital CMS and ready for page layout. And then finally, power-ups, which hopefully everyone's familiar with within Composer, which enable you to bring in custom content types, external providers, such as maybe a podcast solution, into the Arc ecosystem so that your content producers can continue working in the tools while still leveraging outside tools. But that's enough kind of history and context. I want to talk today about IFX and how this new developer platform is really going to change all the different interfaces that we make available and make it easier to get it up and running and to share code within your organization. So before I jump into the specific features and roadmaps, I want to talk about a specific story that I've made a little bit more specific after talking to Matthew yesterday, where we had a client who has crypto references within their story, and they want to make sure that anytime they reference something like Bitcoin, that they are driving traffic and recirculation over to their Bitcoin landing page, for example. And so one way of solving this problem would be, and then here's kind of the end experience. This is just on our internal site, but the idea is that you'd write the story, and then anytime you reference one of these currencies, it would be linked to the landing page. Maybe you want to do something kind of trend, like market trends in line. Really, the possibilities are endless, but the idea here is that you're driving users who want to go deeper or maybe want to learn more about what's going on with Bitcoin, for example. Right now, they could do that from within the article page. Now, one way to solve this problem would be to have a whole army of producers working in some windowless office that are in charge of making sure every article has met every requirement for editorial excellence, is up to every standard, has been spell checked and grammar and SEO optimized. But unfortunately, I don't think just about anyone kind of has a whole army of producers just waiting around to make sure that every Bitcoin reference links to the landing page. So we needed a better approach for how to handle that. One alternative approach would be to just add a Bitcoin button. So you press the button, and then every reference is turned into a link to the landing page. Obviously, that's not a super scalable solution, is it? So we need to build extensibility points for each of you to bring your specific problems and solve for your specific problems on the Arc platform. Of course, we used IFX, or at least recommended using IFX for this flow. So first, let me talk just a little bit about a generic content flow in Arc as it's kind of historically existed. So someone who's working in content updates the story in Composer. That's going to flow through the Draft API. Then we make Kinesis available if you want to set up your own Kinesis listener and follow along to things that happen in the Arc ecosystem. You can write custom middleware, an application that sits outside of Arc, that listens to those Kinesis events, consumes them, performs any business logic, including sending an update back into the Arc ecosystem. That's been around for forever, but it's not always the most seamless process, frankly. So, not everyone is using AWS, so you might be on Google, you might be on a different provider. So first off, there's a hard requirement that you set up an AWS account. Second, you might not be super familiar with Kinesis. There's a manual back and forth to share an IAM profile between Arc and you to get stood up for those events. There's limits on the number of streams we can set up. It's just a little bit cumbersome. Not to mention the actual event stream that Arc emits. It's pretty chatty. If anyone here has worked with it, the internal systems, they send a lot of story updates. And so we knew there could be a better way to handle those story events on Arc. With IFX, our goal is to make sure you can focus just on your core business logic and outsource everything else to us. So when it comes to deciding when to invoke the invocation, when it comes to doing secret management, when it comes to logging, everything else that's kind of a boilerplate of standing up an app, in modern web development, we want to handle as much as it makes sense for us, and then you can just focus just on writing your core business logic. So let's take a look again at that IFX-enabled workflow. So the reporter is working in Composer, and they say, okay, I've got the story in a good place. Maybe they want to publish it, or maybe they want to enhance it first. So they would send it to the enhanced workflow status, for example. That would kick off a WebSked enhanced task, which would invoke the IFX integration. That integration would be set up and could just, again, be focused just on the core business logic of figuring out what's a valid reference that should be linked, updating the content elements, and then sending it back to the Draft API, round-tripping it. And of course, change the workflow status back to edit or maybe publish it along the flow, depending on your business requirements. So I know, not everyone here, maybe just one person here, has a crypto linking use case that they want to solve for, but I'm hoping that you can kind of start to see how this could be applied to a whole set of problems. Really, the list is pretty endless, and I know that everyone in this room can come up with a few themselves. Some of the flows that Vicente talked about yesterday with browser notifications, Slack bot integrations, all of these things are keyed off either the webhooks or Kinesis. They're all kind of over the place. They could be easily moved into IFX, and then you could just focus on just for saying, okay, if someone pitches to our main news browser notification channel, invoke this IFX integration, which has an integration with Firebase, for example. And so the lines of code that you would have to write to make that possible is much lower than it would be before you were using IFX. So let's look at a few other examples. Affiliate links. This is another one where, sure, you could go and talk to your newsroom and say, every time you're doing a book review, make sure you go over to our affiliate link service and generate the affiliate link for that book, for example. And that way, anytime someone clicks checkout from one of your book reviews, you get a little cut of that. And maybe you have more of a consumer wire cutter type strategy. You might have the same problem. Instead of asking everyone to make sure they've gone through, minded their P's and Q's and done everything on the checklist to do the production work, you could instead write a really lightweight IFX integration, which gets those story updates from the relevant section, looks for relevant links, converts them as needed. And again, the possibilities are pretty endless. Like, sure, I'm talking about a pretty trivial case of converting a basic Amazon link into an affiliate link, but you could instead maybe enrich those. Maybe you want to, put the baseball player's card or like some stats about them or their next game or their standing if you're referencing a team, for example. You could do a whole host of different integrations to enrich your content programmatically. It would be a write once, and then have it taken care of forever type situation. So just this week, we added integration with WebSked. So again, WebSked has had the webhook notifications for years, and they're super popular for print integrations, for email integrations. Some customers have built custom internal notification systems. They've also built integrations with external task management solutions, such as Airtable or Trello. Now those same events that are available from WebSked can trigger IFX integrations. So again, you can really easily stand up an integration that responds to a task create event, for example, and then write any custom business logic that you need in that integration, and we'll manage everything else. We'll manage making sure that it runs at the right time, making sure that it has the right secrets for a given environment, make sure that we're producing logs in a way that you can get access to if you need to, all within IFX. Arc Subscriptions has a ton of notifications, frankly, that we've made available via WebSockets. And these are, just to be clear, kind of server-to-server WebSockets for doing your backend integrations. These are not the WebSockets of keeping like a live blog up to date on the consumer side. And so we have about 70 events in the Arc Subscriptions universe so that you have total real-time visibility into what's going on with your user registration and subscription information. So anytime someone creates an account, anytime someone updates their account, anytime someone requests a password reset, for example, that spits off an event. And so with the new IFX integrations, you can write any integrations or custom business logic that you need within an IFX integration. So for example, you could set up your transactional email logic in IFX and say, okay, anytime someone requests a password reset, for example, invoke this integration. And so we'll pass the context about who requested a password reset. You can go and fetch their profile if you need, using the Arc access token, all in the Arc ecosystem. And then you can punch out to ExactTarget or SendGrid or whatever else your preferred email provider is. And it makes it really easy to just focus on, okay, what do I want to do when this event happens? Whether that's sync it with the CDP, or maybe every time you have a subscription, you send an alert to the team, and maybe you have an alarm that says, we got a new subscriber. Whatever it is that you want to do, anything that happens in your environment for your subscribers can kick off an event, which can be subscribed to within IFX. And just as an aside, what we're looking at here is the events menu. This is available in ALC, and it lists out all of the different events that you can subscribe to for IFX. And so you can go to ALC and just type in IFX event registry and then see all of the events, which I think is close to 100 if it hasn't passed already. And you can see a description, what the name is that you would need to subscribe to in order to follow along, and then any other information about like the payload, for example, that will be sent along with that integration. So asynchronous events are when something happens in the Arc ecosystem, whether a task is created, maybe a story is published, maybe a user buys a subscription, and we let you know that that thing happened. But we're not waiting. We're moving on with our lives. The system continues to march on. It's just a, hey, FYI, you might want to take action based on that event, but we're not going to sit here and wait for your response. So you might want to take that story and send it to an analytics solution. Or again, you might want to sync a subscriber to your CDP. But again, that's kind of on your own time. In that IFX integration, you can perform your business logic, send the update out. That's fine. But where IFX is frankly most interesting, at least to me, is synchronous integrations. And that's where we're going to allow custom developers and partner developers on their behalf to actually modify how Arc works in line. And so we've launched the first one of those integrations within Arc Subscriptions. And what it does is it enables you to actually modify how the add to cart and checkout flows work within Arc Subscriptions, so that if you don't want to use Stripe or Braintree or PayU, and you want to use a different payment gateway that we don't have a direct integration with, you can really easily write a lightweight IFX integration that serves as the bridge between Arc Subscriptions and your preferred gateway. Because maybe you have a gateway that is relevant in your country, for example, that PayU or Stripe is not going to make sense. And so here we work together to build the integration you need, but it doesn't mean that you have to own the full subscription stack. It doesn't mean you need to build a full subscription engine and own all of the fun edge cases. We still get to manage that, but you just write just the code for orchestrating between Arc and your gateway. But we'll still manage the subscription retries over time based on the schedule you set up. If the customer starts to churn out and we need to retry them over time, we'll use the rules that you set up within our subscriptions. We'll punch out to, like a Taxamo if you need us to collect tax for that user. So you can own just the small piece of integrating with the payment gateway and extend how Arc works. And this is something that we're going to continue to add this synchronous type integration over time so that you can actually modify how the platform works to meet your custom needs, whether it's just custom business rules, maybe it's just doing a check, for example, or a validation, or punching out to another system to integrate with. We're also adding support in the coming months for scheduled events, and these are basically like cron jobs that you can run on IFX. So maybe every morning you want to check for the stories that you want to send over to your email newsletter provider and build out your morning email newsletter for review by the team, for example. Or maybe every morning you need to run an analytics report and send that data over to your analytics warehouse, for example. With the addition of scheduled events, you can set that up on a cadence that makes sense for you, whether it's every minute, every day, every week, whatever it is that makes sense for you. And you just tell us, hey, what integration do you want to run? And we'll go ahead and invoke it. And then you can leave the rest to Arc. Another capability that we're working on is inbound webhooks. So we've heard from some of our customers that they want better ability to push content and updates into the Arc ecosystem. And with inbound webhooks, you can actually send updates or content into the Arc ecosystem, and then that's routed to an IFX integration that you wrote. So I guess I should actually back up and explain what Beyond Words is. Beyond Words is a text-to-audio provider where you can send them a story and then they'll turn it into an audio file. So you can listen to this story on your article. Now, of course, turning a text story that might be hundreds or even a few thousand words long into audio takes a little bit of time, especially if you've asked for there to be a voice actor, an actual human reading your story. So it can't be one of these things where you request the audio file and then it's immediately available and you just kind of drop it back in. It needs to be a workflow where we notify Beyond Words that your story needs an audio file, and then whenever Beyond Words is ready, it needs to send an update back into the Arc ecosystem. So with inbound webhooks, you could configure within Beyond Words to say, okay, once the story is ready, send it to this endpoint. And again, that would be a lightweight IFX integration that receives that story update, updates it in the Draft API, and then now your audience is able to listen to your stories. Again, I want to make sure that I'm super clear that these are examples of integrations, but because it's custom code that you're running on the Arc platform, you can integrate with whatever solution makes sense for your business. So these are just a few events that we have available now and that we're adding over the coming months, but we're going to continue to add events onto the system. So if you've caught Sarah's update, for example, over on about Arc Intelligence and some of the updates that we have there, we're looking to streamline how you can modify updates that go to the Draft API, for example. So maybe you wanted to do an inline analysis or maybe some inline invalidation into the Draft API. In the future, we'll be able to enable that with IFX. So I've talked a lot about the different features and capabilities and some of the use cases for IFX, but I also want to spend some time talking about the developer experience. Because if it's not easy to use, if you can't trust your workloads on IFX, developers are not going to want to use it. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about what do we want out of a developer platform, taking our learnings from Page Builder Engine and incorporating them into IFX. So we're going to be continuing to spend a lot of time making sure that IFX is a platform that developers are jumping up and down and saying, yeah, I don't want to worry about building this pipeline or setting up a web gateway. I want to just deploy the integration into Arc as an IFX integration and let them take care of kind of all the undifferentiated, all the boring bits that go into web development. So whenever it comes to actually creating an integration, it's really as simple as saying, hey, what's the function that you wrote that's going to perform the task? And then what events do you want us to invoke for that? So in this example, I have a story update handler, and that says basically invoke the story update handler function every time there is either a story create or a story update event. And so we'll route both of those events to this single function, and then we'll pass in the story data, and then you can, again, perform any business logic, punch out to any external systems that you need within this custom code. So on the code on the right, it's whatever you want it to be. It's just Node, so you can, again, drop in Axios and punch out to an external system. You can perform inline validation. Whatever it is that you need to get done, you can do that within your function. So this is a true platform as a service play. Just like Page Builder Engine allows you to focus on your site performance and design and making sure that you have the different blocks and modules that your newsroom needs and offloads, deploying and log management and CDN and everything else to Arc. IFX will serve the same purpose for middleware for customers on the platform. Again, the goal is to get you out of writing a lot of the boring boilerplate and kind of just keeping the lights on work that doesn't add a whole lot of value for your team. So super excited to announce that we do have Node support now. We launched IFX last year with Java support, but we heard from a lot of our customers that Node would be even more useful, especially with so many developers working in JavaScript on Page Builder Engine. So now IFX supports both Java and Node as supported runtimes. IFX is secure. It handles a lot of the kind of, again, the boilerplate security items that you need to make sure that you're managing your secrets, for example, between environments, that you have a good secure logging infrastructure, that you have access tokens that are scoped just to what you need that integration to do. With IFX, all that's built in, and we're continuing to add to that over time so that you can spend less time worrying overnight about making sure that your apps aren't getting hacked, and more time writing your like fundamental business code and the logic and integrations that are going to move your business forward. One of the things that I'm most excited to talk about is IFX is portable. Because customers each have the same environment, it's going to make it a lot easier to share integrations among customers. So if customer A writes an integration to integrate with Beyond Words, for example, because it is, it's just the function, it knows how to run as an IFX integration. It makes it really easy to stand that up as a GitHub repo, for example, and then have client B, if you want them to be, client B could come and say, okay, we're going to fork that for our needs. Maybe we don't even need to fork it. Maybe we just needed to deploy it, and we have environment variables that handle the rest. The possibilities are pretty endless for the community, again, to kind of figure out what the needs are, to share, to collaborate, and to reduce redundant work across organizations that are cooperative. Of course, just to be super clear, you don't have to share anything. This is just code, custom code in your environment. So just like a Page Builder engine or a custom block that you develop, that's just in your environment. No one else can see it. It's not on the internet or anything. I just want to be super clear. But if you so choose, you could say, hey, we have a meetup, and we're going to talk about problem XYZ. Here's the code we used to solve that problem. With IFX, it makes it a lot easier to solve that because it already just has the handler, like what you're going to, the code that you want to run when something happens, and then the instructions for Arc about when that handler should be deployed. Now, I'm sad that our SI partners aren't here, but I think it'll also be relevant to them because they'll be able to write something and they'll be able to easily both reuse it, obviously with the client's permission and licensing terms respected, so they don't have to kind of keep reinventing the wheel for their customers, and they can say, oh, we've already built an integration for that. Let's deploy that into your environment. That they can also, let's see. Yeah, oh yeah. And the other thing that makes it easier for the SI partners is it's an easier handoff story. So a partner comes in and says, oh yeah, we can build you an integration with XYZ, or we can help you do some validation within an IFX integration. It makes it really easy for them to hand that over to the customer and say, here, the integration that's running in your environment. If you need to modify it, here's the GitHub repo that we stood up for you. But there's not an AWS account that we now have to figure out how to transition over to you or do this awkward handoff or kind of back our way into being a SaaS provider and running this for forever. With IFX, they can write it as an IFX integration, hand it over to you as a customer, and then you can own it. You can modify it as you need. You can redeploy it, but you're not dependent on that agency for the rest of eternity. Ryan Gladstone. Now, we have a pretty robust set of docs, especially considering kind of where IFX is as a new product on ALC. So definitely would encourage everyone to go ahead and search for IFX on ALC. There are getting started guides in both Java and Node. There are recipes, so say you want to respond to content update events. There's a specific recipe for that walks you through, tutorial style, step by step, here's how you get that going. And then, of course, there's also the event menu that I mentioned earlier, where you can go see all 100 or so events that are currently available through IFX, learn a little bit more about like when those events are fired off, and then what data we're passing in when we send you that event. So I'm super excited to see what everyone builds with IFX. I think this is going to, over time, especially as we add more of those synchronous integration points, change what it means to integrate and extend Arc. Cool. I'm super happy to answer any questions now, also later as well. So the first integration, so the question was, what's the pricing structure beyond the free tier? So just to be clear, the free tier is one integration, within all of your environments. So you'd have like you have a sandboxing one, that's fine, up to 1 million requests per month. So that's a lot of story updates, even for our publishers who are doing a lot of content. If you go beyond that, either within that single integration, you have 2 million events, 3 million events, or whatever. It's billed at $350 per month. So if it's 2 million, if you have 2 million events, it would be $350. It also is $350 if you stand up other parallel integrations. So maybe you have one content integration that handles all of your content needs, sending push notifications, everything else for content, and then maybe you stand up another one for your subscriptions, for transactional emails or data. The first one would be free if it's under the million. The second one would be $350. But it's the unit of work is 1 million requests per integration. Is that clear? Almost.
Oh,
there we go.
There it is. Hey, my name's Taylor. Thanks for that, Ryan. The scheduling part is interesting to me. If maybe you could speak a little more about that. You said in a few months that was going to be coming out for kind of like the cron job style thing.
Yeah.
A use case that kind of struck home, something we're actually dealing with right now is, let's say they want a story updated once per month, potentially even once per week, I think. I don't know. There was a weird requirement, but like each one of those updates would count as one event happening, right? As you said there, for the quota, or how does that look?
I think we'd have to take a little bit of a look at that. So there is like an execution time limit as part of that price. And I don't want to get off over my skis on the time limit. Like maybe it's 30 seconds or 60 seconds or 90 seconds, like for that integration that could be running. So you could update a host of stories, right, in 60 seconds or 90 seconds.
Right.
But you couldn't update your entire catalog or something. No.
Like, let's say there was a group of stories that were tagged to be updated.
Yeah.
Right? And that was, a couple dozen or whatever. That would count as one event, or I guess.
So again, like it depends on how you architect it. But if you had, maybe you have 5 different tags that need to be updated. Let's keep it simple. You have one tag that's got a couple dozen stories, 36 stories that are, maybe they're like the events listing article for various communities. You could within one request, fetch those 36 stories. You could even, if you needed to paginate, you could get those stories. You could make the updates and send them back. I would think you would be able to do that in one request, yeah.
Pretty quick, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
again, we'd have to get into the details if you're trying to, okay, now we're talking about hundreds of stories. There's some processing time. It starts to get a little complicated for me to do the math
Yeah,
here,
fair.
but
And then just the timeline, you said a few months.
it would be a few months, yeah.
Cool, great, thank you.
Any other questions or maybe even use cases that have popped up as we've gone through some of the capabilities? Cool. Well, thanks so much for taking some time to learn about IFX. Again, I'll be around for the rest of the day and more than happy to chat. Thanks.